let's get going. Okay, it should be recording.
Hmm.
Sure. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
What's-
Thanks, Felix, man. Thanks for doing this. Welcome to
Yeah.
the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me over, G.
All right. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and just like give the audience a little bit about like what you have been doing and how we've met.
So the reason me and Ray got to meet each other was through me like actually debating kids throughout the internet during quarantine because like there wasn't anything else much to do. And then he kind of reached out to me and then we kind of became friends after that. And yeah, like one of my main goals right now is to kind of normalize the political balance in America. And right now, I feel like it's tilted way to the left, and the right is also getting pushed to the right in general. Like, I think it's polarizing. And I feel like that's a big problem in general because you don't want people to polarize. You want some kind of centripetal energy where people stay in the middle, where it's always like, 60% moderate, 20% conservative, 20% liberal, right? But like right now, I feel like we're seeing 50% liberal, 50% conservative,
Mm-hmm.
or like a little more on the liberal side, just because the liberals have the bigger cities. But yeah,
Okay. Yeah, you're still doing the Instagram live stuff, right?
I kind of am on a pause hiatus right now, but I'm coming right back to it in a couple of weeks. But I'm making YouTube videos.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll plug your information down below in the description and
yeah, nah, it's fine, it's fine. Just
all
give me a
right.
shout whenever. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, right before this, we kind of had like a 5 minute talk, and you said you want to talk about some general ideas like of like on both the left and right, and we can have some discussions about it. So, I figured there's like aside from COVID, one of the bigger issues in the presidential and vice president debate has been the environment issue. Um, and I would consider myself, I don't really know where I would put myself in the political spectrum, but sometimes I agree. I want to say maybe I lean right, and this is one of the issues that I really have no stand on, especially on Trump. Like I know some of my friends who are Trump supporters, they're just really confused by Trump's like environmental policies. Like why is he in denial on a lot of the the expertise and also related to COVID? Why does he not believe in science? Like what are some of your thoughts on maybe the right or even the left's how they want to deal with the environment.
So I'm in the middle right now, like in terms of like the environmental thing. It's just like I do agree that there is climate change. Human caused climate change. There's pretty decently strong data on that. And I think that a majority of the scientists out there agree with me on that. But where I feel like I kind of push off from a lot of the social justice warrior types in terms of the environment is that they have too many radical steps, I feel, for data that is very across the board. So my point is some of the more extreme data says that the amount of carbon dioxide, the amount that we're emitting in general, is just like a speck of dust in the scheme of things, meaning that yes, we're producing a lot, but the earth already has, but it's like not, it's only a small percentage of what the earth already has. So like humans aren't the only like group of animals that are emitting things in general, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
like so some science says that we don't really need to do anything and we're going to be fine. Like there's not going to be mass chaos. And other science that a lot of people like on the far left believe in, like AOC,
Yeah.
they keep saying the rhetoric that the earth is going to end in 12 years if you don't do anything about it, which I kind of disagree with.
Yeah. I certainly think
Because
that's ridiculous. That's
uh,
not gonna happen in 12
I
years.
think that's ridiculous. And even some of the more sensible people, like our science teachers, say stuff like that. Like our environmental science teachers, whom I would consider moderate on most issues, they're kind of bought into the rhetoric that the earth is gonna, be destroyed or like it's gonna go across a tipping point after a couple of years. And I just feel like it's really hard to have a stance on the environmental issues just because the data is there, but
hmm
you cannot separate the data from the data influenced by politics.
hmm
You understand what I'm saying,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's tricky. I mean, it's like it's kind of like COVID, where the death rate and the like the infectious rate are so you can get all sorts of data from like all sorts of institutions where you don't really know like what is the exact like 99% of people can agree on we have some sort of impact on the environment and it will come back and bite us. But
Mhm.
we don't know exactly how harmful is it going and how we have to deal with it. But maybe I would argue for the left. Like I totally disagree with like there is no impact. There's definitely impact. But just to put some like as far as I know, like from the historical standpoint, like I was reading a book called Sapiens. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a
I
really
haven't. No.
it's so there's this point that was raised in that book. It basically says ever since we became Homo sapiens, which is like the our species,
Mhm.
uh we have like every single continent we've moved to, we've killed off like most of the mammals. Like we have a huge, enormous environmental impact, like more than all kinds of all other animals, like
Mhm.
individually we're talking
Of
about.
course. Yeah.
And so like, but that was pre-industrial revolution, like thousands of years, tens of thousands of years before that. Because we're humans, we just have the ability to, you know, form groups and use tools, and we just like have huge impacts on the environment. And
Mhm.
even if like we have not discovered how to use fossil fuels, we would be chopping down trees and using woods like timbers instead.
Mhm.
So we would still impact the environment one way or another. However, that being said, because we have the technology to maybe invest in green energy, for example, what Tesla is doing, what you
Mhm.
know, like all sorts of we might want to get rid of fossil fuels. We have the ability to improve the environment. Like back then, we didn't have a choice, but now we do have a choice,
I
right?
disagree. I disagree with what
Okay.
you're saying because I feel like the rhetoric around Tesla and the glamour around Tesla is because of yes, it is green, but it's green because it's cool. Like you know what I'm saying? No one would buy an electric car if it looked ugly, if it looked like the electric cars 5 years ago.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily what Tesla is doing is not necessarily more economically efficient than fossil fuels. It's
Yeah.
more expensive, but people are buying. What I'm saying is that people are buying it because it's cool, not necessarily because it's more economically efficient. A country that has tried green energy for the sake of being more economically efficient was Germany.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They've put a lot of solar energy panels, and look what happened to them. They what they realized was that the sun doesn't come up at night, and they have to turn on the coal-fired plants at night.
Yeah. Well.
So they have more emissions after they added all the solar panels.
Yeah.
Then, uh-huh.
Okay, that's great information input. I didn't know that, but I've read things about maybe the solar panel. Like they are very, of course, they're very green. However, when they're like you have to get rid of them, they create a lot of environmental like side effects. Like you can't get rid of like solar panels easily without harming the environment. And also like wind turbines, they're not super efficient. But
Yeah.
as I also agree, like I'm a big fan of Tesla because partially because I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, but of course, like people buy Tesla cars because they're cool. But I would
Mhm.
argue that if, let's say, there are two different cars, car A and car B, and car A is environmental friendly and car B is not, like in the traditional definition, like they use fossil fuel, and they're the exact same price, I would argue more people would buy car A because it's
Yeah,
environmental.
but that's not the case right now. It's going to be like people predict that it's going to be a while, and I do agree. I don't know how long. I'm assuming it's going to be like 5 to 10 years at least, where green energy is becoming, much more efficient than fossil fuels. And another problem is that yes, green energy, a lot of the predictors that I find fraudulent are fraudulent, and I don't find have any merit in my opinion, is because you have to realize that there's so many countries out there, usually authoritarian
Mm-hmm.
economies like Russia, the OPEC countries, that have control over these fossil fuel energy sources. So a lot of the statistics that come out right now saying that green energy will be cheaper than oil and all the fossil fuels are based on an average of like 5 to 10 years or current market price, right?
Okay.
These OPEC countries and Russia, they have the power to drop that. So even if green energy becomes cheaper, as long as the OPEC countries they just decide to drop it like that, green energy still isn't economically efficient. So
By economic inefficient, you said economically inefficient, right?
economically inefficient, saying that one's more expensive than the other. Green energy is still more expensive than fossil fuels. And
Okay.
there's also a moral dilemma to it because if you give subsidies, and the subsidies that they give to the oil and fossil fuel industry
Mm-hmm.
isn't large considering the grand scheme of things. They give billions of dollars, yes, to what, $1 trillion industry. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not that large in the scheme of things. And they give so much more subsidies in terms of for green energies, which I'm not a big fan of either. I don't think both should be getting any subsidies. But my point is that if you give one company a subsidy from a libertarian point of view, if you give one company a subsidy,
Okay.
it's inherently driving down another business. So it's not fair. So supporting one thing is harmful to the other. And uh, I just find it hypocritical for a lot of both sides, both the Democratic and Republicans, to argue ethics on one thing. So, for example, going back to COVID, arguing that the herd immunity thing is unethical, but then for environmental sources, giving subsidies is ethical. Both are unethical. You should have some kind of balance in between the two. But I mean, like, you should balance between ethics and logic. And in this case, I feel like ethics should play a heavier part just because a lot of people's jobs are on the line, not just the oil tycoons. You know, the people, a lot of
Okay.
20% of the US economy is dependent on energy,
How much?
specifically fossil
How much?
fuels. 20% plus.
20%?
20% plus of the US economy is dependent on fossil fuels.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so here are some of my thoughts maybe. So about the subsidies part, also about the economically inefficient. I think could there, this is just like a speculation. I have no idea how this works. Like probably nobody knows how this is going to turn out, but I feel like um I myself, I think we will eventually go to green, right? We will
Of course,
eventually
yeah,
do most of
everyone
it.
thinks that.
But
Yeah.
then it's like kind of like going it's kind of like we are at the beginning of a transitional period. So it's going to be hard to get things started. Um, and that also kind of relates to the subsidies part and government regulation. For example, let me give you an example of uh, like uh, like space flight, commercial space flight, like Elon Musk, what he's doing with SpaceX.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
like basically, as far as I know, there are only three companies that are kind of in the competition of space flight. One is
Uh-huh.
Elon Musk SpaceX, the other is Jeff
Virgin Health.
Bezos, and the third
Yeah.
one is Virgin Galactic. So basically
Uh-huh.
those three. But from what we've seen so far, like the only one that's really competitive against like NASA and those, I mean, NASA is like cooperating with Elon Musk. The only thing is like SpaceX because they've managed to push the prices down so low, and they've managed to figure out a lot of crazy things that no one expected them to do. But
Mhm.
before that, like Elon went to Russia to buy the jet engines, buy the rocket engines, and he reached out to NASA. He really tried really hard. And the argument I would make is that those are the areas where if you don't have a lot of money, you need a very strong incentive, and you need some sort of like, it's really hard to get into those markets although they might be super profitable. Like we can all agree on there's a lot of like I think, I don't know if you agree, but there's a lot of profit to be made in green energy, but it's just hard to get in because all the of the oil tycoons and all those stuff. Like this is an underdeveloped area, and I'd say we're in a transitional beginning period where some sort of government subsidies can be good for like little corporations to get started. And after that, after we were like through the hardest period, then things can get started, and more companies that work on green energies can somehow figure out a way to be more economically efficient, and then our problem can be solved little by little. Like it's not easy. It's kind of like where the beginning of industrial revolution, where like factories are just started to show up, and then they have to recruit farmers to stop farming and instead work in factories. I don't know how that exactly went down, but I just feel like
That
this.
wasn't government intervention. That was
Yeah,
not
but
government
yeah,
intervention.
I know, but like there must be some sort of encouragement, right? Like government at that time, like in the late 1800s and early 1900s, it was like known in the American politics to be like pretty uh libertarian. Like there was not much government intervention, and then people can,
Mhm.
although there was not much subsidies, but there was not much regulation on the huge corporations. So they had so people
Yes,
had.
there was. There was regulation in the sense that it helped. So in like 10 plus states, like 12, I believe, they gave legalized monopolies to Standard Oil. So there was regulations. I'm not saying that no regulations is good, and I do believe that the Glass-Steagall Act should be used to its full potential.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying that there was regulation still in the quote unquote laissez-faire economics standard
Okay.
of the time.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
So the one thing that's wrong with capitalism is inequality.
Right.
It's an
Exploitation of
evil that
workers.
you have to kind of play with, that you have to accept, kind of,
Hmm.
as your brother. But the thing is inequality really morally wrong to an extent if there is social mobility, right? So like, I don't think inequality is that morally wrong if there is social like mass social mobility. So
Yeah,
as long as we take turns being poor and being rich, I think is completely fine over the generations.
yeah. I mean, I don't think we disagree on that. I think like
Mhm.
as long as we make sure that people are not overly exploited, as long as there are no like indentured servants or slaves, like there
No, yeah.
will be some sort of economic inequality. I don't think no one's arguing that. I'm just saying like even government subsidies. I mean, we'll probably move on from this topic, but I'm just saying like
Yeah.
uh, I mean, no one really knows. But here's another thing that's pretty interesting. Like, I mean, we probably as you said, your opinion on this is somewhat moderate, so I know like you're not believing the scientists. Of course, this is
Mhm.
taking place, but you're also probably from what I've heard you said, you're probably against what AOC wants to do, and also
Yeah, of course, yeah.
so like how do you think the government, they can, like, what's the right direction for them, like how much focus do we really want to put on like environmental issues and like trying to, like, we have to get started, but like how much money?
We can stop subsidizing the oil industry first of all and get out. That's all we can do. The government, if the government tells you that they can fix something, the chances of them being able to fix it is close to nil. Like they probably can't fix it. So
Hmm.
I think they should get out. First of all, I'm more libertarian in this regard. I don't think they should be in the subsidies market in the first place.
Okay.
So, except for like necessary stuff, so like steel, like stuff that might be needed in case of a national emergency, stuff that like we need to survive. Instead of that, like I think they should give subsidies to a point where we are somewhat independent on energy needs. But other than that, I don't think that they should subsidize oil like that. And another thing that you have to realize was that you gave me an example of Elon Musk and not getting help from the government. That's why like the progress was slow, right? What you also have to realize is that some of the most revolutionary company of the 21st century, so like Amazon, for example, these companies didn't get subsidies from the government, even though they were quite revolutionary. What they did was that they lost money for 20 years,
Well,
around 20 years, to get the exponential growth that they have these days. So I'm just saying that you need to find private investors that are willing to go on a journey with you where you will lose money for a decade or two, maybe a decade, because Amazon's like a niche category. But I'm just saying that you need to find people that are willing to invest in you, even though they know you will lose money for a while. And a while, I mean like a 10 years plus.
no doubt, no doubt, I
Yeah.
think that's a good point, but
I don't think the government needs to be in that business at all.
yeah, from what I'd say is like Musk, he went out and found venture capitalists that would invest in his company. But
Yeah, that's
like
what he did.
I just feel like Amazon, like there were, this is just a pure guess, but there were probably companies similar to Amazon before, but Amazon is just like came later and kind of succeed in that sense. I don't know if they got government subsidy, but yeah, I can
They
get down
didn't,
with
but
it.
they held their infrastructure correctly. So they went in slow. So they started with books and then they went into hardware. So they went slowly into every sector.
Yeah.
And they did that without the government's help.
Hmm. Okay. So you're like 100% against like green, like electric car companies getting government.
I am for them, like, giving money to government entities, so like the military, to invest for like renewable energy sources, including or non-renewable, like clean non-renewable, so like nuclear energy, like
Mhm.
stuff like that. So finding alternate energy sources like to the military, but I don't think they should go out and support private organizations
Okay.
that will compete in the market because I think that there's an ethical problem with that,
Hmm. Okay.
right? Because if you support one, you're pushing down the other.
That's fair. Okay,
Yeah.
let's kind of segue our way into maybe both in the presidential debate and in the vice president debate,
Mhm.
the Democratic candidates, they kind of avoided the question of the Green New Deal, and that's pretty interesting, and like from what I'm understanding, because not only this, but also a lot of the other opinions. I watched some of the Kyle Kalinske show, and then he's more left than Biden, which is arguably a corporate centrist or corporate Democrat. And there are a lot of the things that they disagree on as to like even after the 2016 election, a lot of the far left people, they would not vote for Biden no matter what. Like they just believe that this is a chance of like making either Biden win or lose. This is a chance of making them realize like people like the Bernie supporters what they really want. Do you think? Let's start from here. Do you think the after the Democratic primary, it's a Biden's a better choice than Bernie Sanders to either be a president or defeat Trump?
I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure. I feel like Bernie might be a better choice, but the thing is that I feel like Bernie has a. I'll just say this because I'm not sure at all. I'll just say that Bernie has a habit of basically joining the presidential campaign, acting like he'll be president or being the Democratic candidate, and then just dipping in the last second and then supporting whoever's on top of him. So he's the best guy for second place. And a
Wait, by
lot of
second place,
people,
you mean vice president or just
no, second place as in like second place in the Democratic
okay,
convention.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's always second place, right? Like, and I feel like it's a little more intentional because it hasn't been the first time that he's done it. And I'm also basing my logic off of the fact that some of the Bernie supporters who gave him millions of dollars in like campaign spending, they are suing him right now because when Hillary in the 2016 Democratic convention,
Yeah.
Hillary had enough electoral votes. So Bernie, he still, received campaign like funding, right?
Yeah.
So it would have been immoral for him to receive campaign funding because Hillary already had the electoral votes to be the Democratic candidate. That's why they're suing him. So that's why I'm just saying that I feel like Bernie, I don't think he ever wanted to be president. Maybe everyone wants to be president, but I don't think he had the intention of being president from the start.
Could,
Look at 2016. He was second place. He supported Hillary. Look right now. He was second place. He supported Biden. I mean, like, there's some kind of pattern here. And I'm not like landing any conspiracy theories. I don't think it's conspiracy theory. I just think that he knows that his opinions are extremely to the left. Like, they're very socialistic principles that he has. And he knows that he's not going to win. Or even if, and I think that a lot of the corporate supporters and the trade unions that support the Democratic left, like they know that they don't want Bernie either. So I feel like there's some kind of alienation of a minority in the Democratic Party.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, but but the extreme has been growing though. Like a lot of kids I see are now like socialists.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
I just find that I don't know. Okay, so if you're a Nazi in America, it's a bad thing, right?
Yeah, of course.
Then why isn't being a Marxist bad? Hitler killed what you call it? Stalin and Lenin killed just as many people or more than, you know,
That yeah,
Hitler did.
I have thought about that a lot actually. Yeah,
Yeah, and another thing is that you have to realize that Hitler was a national socialist.
that too. People
Yeah,
argue that if he's extreme left or extreme right, it's
I don't think he's either. I think so. A lot of the funny thing, the humorous thing, is ironic because like a lot of what a lot of the commies and the socialist kids say is that it wasn't real socialism. It wasn't real communism. That's what they always say,
that's
right?
the argument. That's the go-to argument to for
Yeah,
such
and I'm
a
like,
problem.
that's BS. I mean, like, I find a huge moral qualm with that, and this is from Jordan Peterson. I agree with him wholeheartedly. Is that when you say stuff like that wasn't real communism or that wasn't real socialism, you're implying that you or someone that you know of can do it better.
Okay.
And you have to realize that these people, even though they were lunatics, I don't like they were very cold-hearted people like Stalin and Lenin. They still knew more about Marxist literature than, I mean, I guess the experts of Marxist literature of the 21st century. They were one of the top. They read it front to back. They knew everything about Marx in general. So I'm just saying that if you think, or if you, or someone that you know, if you think that those groups of people can do it better than Lenin or Stalin, I'll be baffled because Lenin and Stalin were quite the experts in Marxist literature. And number two is that even if you could do better and if you had the great intentions, there's someone that's going to shoot you in the back because that's what happened to the old guard that fought against Lenin and Stalin.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the best intentions. That's just my argument against Marxism
I
and
mean,
socialism in general.
yeah, that's you've had some pretty good points there. Like, first of all, you said there has been an increasing number of supporters, especially among
Mhm.
young people on the extreme left or even far left. And let's not all call them extreme. I mean, they had some good points, but like they are increasingly. I don't want to say some of them more idealistic, but some of the things they believe, like there has like a lot of people argue that one of the reasons why not fascism is more like people uh, how do I say like demise fascism more than communism is because obviously Hitler is more he did more harm to the Western like so-called Western civilization than and Stalin because Stalin is kind of more remote. Like Stalin kind of did his thing mostly in his country. Like he harmed the people in his country and also in like communist China and like other influence in other communist countries, whereas Hitler just directly fought, the Western countries, England, United States, so they have more of a sense of like also the Holocaust. Like it's more fascism is obviously more. People are more informed about fascism in America, especially than what Stalin has committed. Like no one really cares about what happened, in the 1930s, what happened in all those generals and all the people, all the families in Ukraine. People just don't really know about it here. But yeah, I mean, Lenin is kind of different from Stalin, but I really think like the argument, whereas like you argue that there has never been a true sense of either socialism or communism is kind of idiotic. But okay,
Yeah.
I actually want to ask you about some opinion on you have on China, but I probably can't give you my opinion just because I'm a Chinese citizen and I still want to go back. But I just want to hear about maybe your opinion on uh, uh if I'm not mistaken, are you a Korean
I'm
immigrant?
Korean, so I can tell you anything. Honestly, so my opinion on China is that it's my girlfriend's Tibetan, by the way. Love her
Okay.
to death. But so you see them doing a lot of bad things in general to Tibet, to the Uyghurs, to a lot of the Muslim-based people in China, right? And I mean, like, I feel bad. Don't get me wrong. And I think that from a national security standpoint, the America in general should. What Trump did was right, basically, in a sense, or like in what his approach was might have been wrong, but what he was going for was right in the sense that we should punish China or do things that they don't like so that they can, fuck off our from other countries and the US interests in general. So one thing that I found interesting was the fact that Doctor Strange, right?
From the movie, like the Marvel movie?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the white monk that who taught him?
The bald one?
Yeah.
The
So she was
one?
supposed to be
Yeah.
a Tibetan monk. She was supposed to be a Tibetan
Yeah, and
monk.
they changed it, right?
Yeah, they changed it because China was, sticking their nose in our business. So I don't like that. So I'm just saying that they should, we should take steps so we can push them out of other countries. But we shouldn't be the hero because we don't have enough resources for ourselves in the first place. So I'm just saying that we should take steps to curb their power and influence away from us. But we shouldn't take extra steps, to protect other countries with like to protect to like basically have another Vietnam. I don't think we should go take other steps to have another Vietnam, but we should kind of take other countries and our interests into concern when we make policies against China, instead of just trade deals and just economic profit in general. They should intervene if it's in the US interest to, which it might be, and it probably is. Just because having an extra, country that supports you in that region won't lead to another Vietnam, right? Because like if the US had better relationships with Cambodia during the Vietnam War, then Russia wouldn't be able to send, weapons over to the Viet Congs.
About Vietnam, I'm not too familiar with how it started, but like, was it because of like human rights violation, or is it because like they were afraid Vietnam's gonna turn out to be another communist?
Communist, because it was north and south, like Korea right now.
Yeah.
It was north and south. The north was going into south, so the geographically is like North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and Cambodia was up here. So what I'm saying is that Tibet might be a great area for the U.S. to have an influence in. So it might be in their interest to help Tibet kind of be free, independent of China. But I'm just saying that if it isn't, if the cost benefit doesn't work out, there's no reason for the US to go out explicitly and fight China for Tibet.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to share my opinion on this. I'll remain neutral, but the only thing I would say is that that's what I was saying about the difference between Vietnam and Tibet. It's like Vietnam is more of like you can argue that, Western civilization is totally against communist regimes, but Vietnam was mostly because of their governmental belief, like the belief of the left and the capitalism and communism. But Tibet, more people are arguing the U.S. or other countries should intervene is because of the concentration camps and the human rights violations. So I think there's a
I
little.
don't think the human rights violations are extreme in Tibet. It's just that they're taking over the country. I don't think it's a human rights violation necessarily. I
Okay.
mean, so the human rights violations that are listed in like the Human Rights Code, the International Human Rights Code, it's very flawed because what you have to realize is that if that really is the Human Rights Code, then like half of the world's countries can't pass it. They'll fail it. And another 25% will be probably kind of get a C plus rating, I guess, like in terms of the human rights codes violations. And even countries like the US and the, countries that are, developed countries, even those countries would fail it due to the fact that they have covert operations. They probably, violate human rights. So I'm just saying that having a law where no one has the ability to follow it is kind of foolish. So saying that, oh, it's human rights, it's a foolish argument in my opinion.
Okay, let's just say that all
Yeah.
countries have their flaws on those types of issues. Like no
No,
one.
I'm just saying that saying that there are human rights violations isn't that it is a big deal, yes, but I'm just saying that in an argument, in a logical argument, it's not that great big of a deal saying that, oh, we should intervene in this country because there are human rights violations. That's not a good argument because there are human rights violations in the other 100+ countries in the world. So are you going to do something about everything there, or are you going to do something about one country like Tibet?
Yeah, but like there's different levels of it. I would say, like I
Yeah,
don't know what's actually going on there, but there's only like
of
if there's
course.
like a one case of like very minor human right violation to like 10 people in one country, like they probably wouldn't really intervene. It's
Yeah,
not
of course.
because there's no benefit for the US to intervene. Of course there's like still geographical benefit for the US to. Okay, so moving on from that, what you said about Doctor Strange, that part I find it very interesting because wouldn't people argue that it's more of that's the result of like a capitalist system? Like it's not because when China wanted them to not include a Tibetan monk, like was it directly to the US government or was it to like the movie production people?
It was to the American,
It's kind of like the
it
NBA
was
thing,
because
right?
a Chinese businessman invested in it. And the Chinese businessman is obviously linked to the CCP, the Politburo specifically, right? But I'm just saying that the US necessarily doesn't do that on the industrial level. I feel like the US doesn't do that as much in the industrial level. the US doesn't try to exert its influence through its corporations like China does.
Yeah, no doubt. That's
Yeah.
no doubt.
And I think that China shouldn't do that as much.
Well,
That's why the US try to ban things like TikTok because the government and the corporations are so interlinked there.
yeah,
It's a
that's
risk
your
doing
argument.
business with China in general. And I feel like it will be in China's schools too to kind of lower their link between the businesses and the government because no one will end up doing business with China if there's a better alternative or
Yeah,
like even a slightly less better alternative.
yeah. I would say that's China's, no matter if it's good or bad, that's China's biggest bargaining tool. It's like US, they have, obviously the biggest economic system and a lot of advanced technologies. And for China, it is that strong centralized government that is able to reach everywhere.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, like every developed country has had a period, or like, I'll give you an example of the four Asian tigers. So, specifically, Korea, every like undeveloped country, countries that weren't developed
Hmm.
like 50 years prior that have suddenly become like semi-developed or
Yeah.
developed countries. So, like some parts of the UAE, like Dubai, Korea, those countries have all had a couple of decades of authoritarian leadership. So if you want fast economic growth, you need a centralized government for a couple of years, even though there might be human rights violations, even though there might be silencing of political opponents. So it's what you want. Do you want a fast rate of progress, or do you want more ethical methods of going
Yeah.
about progress that might be slower, that are way slower?
But that gets to pretty dangerous territory because,
Not really. I mean, it's history. I mean, like,
yeah, I
if
mean, but even that, because like I actually had that thought when I was like I think it was last year when I was in history class, and then like you see a lot of the rapid growth in a lot of the countries. It was from the totalitarian kind of
but
regime,
they have to be good
but
totalitarian
exactly
states
because
that try to help people.
there are also a lot of the failures. Like there
Yeah,
also
of course, there are a lot of failures. Yes.
yeah, and a lot of people would say that no matter how fast the economic growth is, and that's also one of the issues about China, because some people argue that China is only is the way it is now because there hasn't been a big economic downturn. And if there happens to be one, that's some of the people's arguments. It's not mine, but like I'm just saying, if there happens to be like a big like a 2008 type of situation happen in China, a lot of the issues will be exposed just because now everyone's doing fine. They can put food on the table. They don't really look at the things that's happening in the government system. And if that happens, that I mean, also people would say that no matter how big of an economic growth there is, like it should not be based on like the exploitation of poor
It's
people or
I disagree. It's more so the people's level of standard of living. So once people start living, once the relative poverty decreases in that country, then people start giving more of a crap of whether the country's a democracy or not.
but okay, this is a very extreme example. So what if people argue that with Hitler or Stalin? Like if we get rid of 5 million Jews and then all the German people can have a better living standard. I know that's a very extreme example, but isn't that like if you just really don't care about the process and only care about the outcome, isn't that the fastest route to do? Just like rob millions of people and just make the country better?
No, what I'm arguing is that if there is like I'm no, I'm what I'm really are those were developed countries already, by the way.
Oh yeah,
What
sure.
I'm really arguing is that if there's an undeveloped country, the fastest mode of them to grow, typically, and historical standards, is that they usually had a good authoritarian government, an authoritarian government that actually gave a crap about the people, like Libya, Korea. Those two countries are my main examples, where they had decent authoritarian leaders, where yes, they were violent to their own people. They did kill a couple hundreds of people, right? But
Okay. Yeah.
there's a cost benefit there.
Yeah,
So because of the deaths of a couple hundreds of people, the rest of Korea and Libya, before Gaddafi was killed, of course,
but
was in very great economic shape. Like people, it's considered that like people don't die of starvation anymore in Korea.
yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think this is a slippery slope because I don't think the reason why China and Korea and Libya or some other countries that was once a totalitarian country or still now, it's not because they're now like quote unquote developed countries, or like China. You can argue if it's a developed country or not, but like they're not developed because of the violence and human rights violations and all the people they killed. Those are merely byproducts. Like the reason why they are as successful as they are now is because the totalitarian, one of the one of the things that give the totalitarian regimes an advantage over democratic procedure is that they get things done quickly.
Mhm.
That's the then we
That
can talk.
requires the deaths of hundreds of people, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, I mean that's
That is true. Like, you
sounds
can't
really bad,
kill
but this
like
is
your political opponents in America like that. In the Philippines, where they do have an authoritarian government, arguably, in election season, all the political candidates, like thousands of them die. Like hundreds. Okay, thousands of them died over the past of like 10 years.
yeah. What's up
Like,
with the? Oh, okay. Just like a side note, I have a question about Korea actually.
uh-huh.
So you know how like a lot of the politicians they like kind of die? Like that's what I see on the news. Like they just disappear or die after
Yeah,
the elections
that's a
and
big
stuff.
deal. Yeah.
What's up about that? Like, are you allowed to talk about it, or you have no clue what? It's just the way it is.
It's not that big in Korea. It doesn't occur in Korea like that. But in places like the Philippines, I can't talk about that. It happens because it's not that expensive to hire a hitman on someone. It costs like what, $80 to $100? And that's not because I hired a hitman. It's because it's like basic knowledge in the Philippines that you can hire a hitman for $80 to $100.
But why would?
And
Okay,
uh,
keep going.
and so like I mean, if you're a guy trying to like rank yourself up in politics, and you want some money because your family will like because you want your family and you to have a better life, and you're willing to do anything to get there, and a hitman costs $80 to $100. I mean, like, you can connect the dots on your own. What will happen to like, yeah, right? Like,
Yeah. Okay. Let's kind of move on that.
yeah.
I think that's the part where we have more disagreement. We can talk about that
No,
another
I'm not saying
time.
that's a good thing. I'm really saying that's what happens. I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
saying
I'm not saying the hitman thing. I'm just saying like the totalitarian thing. Like we have some common understanding, but I think there's some fundamental things that
okay. Let me say one more point. So what you said is
sure.
that it's a slippery slope, right? There's one country where they have strong democratic values and they're growing at a steady rate without any authoritarian government. That country is South Africa.
South Africa, I mean, I'd also say
Have
it's
an authoritarian government. But look what happens over there. Their rate of growth is slow. The A lot of the money, the inequality is large. Like a couple of families have, close to 40% of the country's money.
yeah, I mean the issue with South Africa, like I have very limited knowledge on South Africa, but as far as what I know, apartheid played a big role on the current development because after apartheid, this sounds like super wrong, but a lot of the white rich people fled the country because there was like after Mandela, there a lot of people criticized Mandela's because it was even like people would even say it was like a wave of political correctness where they just get rid of all the white people and then like empower and then just like put black people there purely because of the color of their skin, which results in not like a pure democratic, competition based, government system. It was kind of forced. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of forced, and that created a not
And
a lot
that's what's
of
happening in
unnatural.
America right now. We have forced affirmative action like policies.
Yeah, we can
Where-
talk about primitive
And
action.
you have only black graduations in Harvard, which doesn't make any sense to me. You have these things called safe spaces, and to a certain extent, I agree with them. You should have the ability. So, like, let's say my dorm roommate was a hyper liberal, right?
Okay.
And I do say things that are really politically incorrect. So, like, for example, I'm just saying that like it's a lie if like a kid our age says that he doesn't use the N word ever.
Okay.
That's a lie. That's a pretty big lie. I mean, like, I don't use the N word in public, but if I'm in like a closed room where like the room is locked and I can't fucking open the door, I mean, I might blurt it out on accident. I try not to use it. And I think that's the case for most a majority of people in our country right now that's our age, right? And so what I'm really trying to argue is that you should have a safe space in the sense that you don't want your dorm mate recording you, trying to catch you saying any bad word and trying to get you expelled, right?
Wait. I'm not sure about how the safe. From what I understand, isn't safe space like you're not
There's
allowed
levels of
to.
safe spaces. So there's more extreme safe spaces and there's safe spaces like I'm talking about.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is that like my idea of a safe space, like a reasonable safe space, is that where you don't hurt another person physically, where you don't record them behind their back, and when there's like a certain source of honor and trust between those two groups of people.
Aren't
But
those aren't those like recording people and hitting people? Those are like assaults and like violations of. Those are not
yeah,
like. Those
yeah,
are.
no, that's my definition of an acceptable safe space, and that's what it, and that's
Oh, really?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I get what you're
No,
saying now.
yeah, yeah. That's an acceptable safe space for me. But an unacceptable safe space for me is where you can only have black people or gay people or Asian people. And where you have to be careful of what you say, even though it may be true, due to the moral posturing of sensitivity by other people. Meaning that I have to be careful of what I say, even though I know it's right and it's a fact versus statistic. So,
Mhm.
for example, saying something like 50% of Muslims in Britain believe that gay marriage should be illegal,
Mhm.
right? Saying stuff like that, hurting another Muslim's feelings, right? Or them being sensitive to it should have nothing to do with anything, right? Like, I mean, I shouldn't censor myself. I should censor myself to the sense that I shouldn't use the N word in front of black people. I shouldn't go around calling people, tards, like
Yeah,
retards.
yeah,
I
R word.
shouldn't call people stuff like that. But I'm just saying that I shouldn't have to censor myself regarding facts. And when, yeah, when I'm talking about facts and when I'm trying to have a decent argument.
So yeah, I mean facts. No one questions that. So
I mean, but there are stuff like that. There are safe spaces where you can't literally say facts. So
so
saying stuff like in a transgender safe space, for example, I wouldn't be able to say stuff like the suicide rate for transgenders pre and post transgender gender reassignment surgery is same. That would not be acceptable in a transgender safe
well,
space. Some of the more extreme ones. But I'm just saying that, yeah, what the conservatives are doing is wrong in the sense that they're trying to get the extreme examples and then generalize it to all safe spaces. And what
that,
the
that's
liberals are
wrong.
doing wrong is that they're trying to get the extreme examples and try to generalize it to all safe spaces.
That,
So they're trying to make all safe spaces extreme, which is completely wrong.
that's what politics is about, and it's just straw manning on like the other person. Wait,
Yeah,
so
I mean, yeah.
from let me just make sure that I'm understanding your argument correctly. So you said you support some sort of safe space, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like you can't say the N word. Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
because you can't say the N word in like society. It's not illegal to say the N word.
Well,
You
okay, yeah.
might get beat up, but I'm just saying that you can say it. Like if I blurted out the N word in front of people and I wasn't going to a school, for example, there would be no repercussions against me, unless I got fired because they reported it directly to my boss.
I don't know about
Right.
like you would get away with like saying the N word and someone
Yes, you
reports
can.
it in
Yes,
school.
you can. There's no. It's called free speech. There's nothing like
Yeah,
legally wrong with saying the N word. But I'm just saying that there should be a little more restrictions on what you can say in universities, right?
yeah.
In public spaces or in private spaces. But I'm just saying that for some of the pronouns where you're forced to call someone he or she instead of, for example, another alternative where it might not infringe on someone's religions. Like, let's say you're a transgender woman, so someone who transgender from a man to a woman, right? So
Mhm.
instead of the law forcing me to call you she, instead if I called you Ray, which wouldn't, for example, infringe on Catholic or Christian beliefs that I may have, which I don't have, but I'm just using this as an example. That would be okay. But forcing someone to use a certain word is not okay.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Like
And
it's
I think
like
that
the
some of the
Jordan
safe
Peterson
spaces,
lawsuit, right? It's
yeah,
the Jordan Peterson lawsuit. Yeah, like where like Canada wanted like certain campuses to use the pronouns that like they would like to use, and Jordan Peterson refused because he said the government should not tell them what to do. Instead, they can only tell them what not
Yeah,
to do.
what not to do,
Right?
and even that should be used carefully.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But the universities can go a little harsher. So the university can go a little harsher on what they can't use, but I still believe that they can't force you to use a certain word.
I don't think anyone's like forcing anyone to use anyone else.
No, there are a lot. There
Yeah, I
are
know. I know a
schools
lot
that,
of the liberal
especially
schools.
regarding the
Yeah,
pronoun.
I do. I,
Yeah.
I do know a lot of the liberal schools. They like get rid of teachers. You know, tell them. And also like there was this one news. I think it was a month ago where like a USC professor said use the term 那个 in Chinese, and it's like another word. It's just like it's a common phrase that people say in Chinese, and I've actually been accused to say the N word when I was talking in Chinese with another friend. But
I mean, yeah, you went to you live in California. It's a
I'm in
nut job
California
of a
mess
liberal
right now.
state.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a horrible state to be in terms of political like, dynamic.
People are moving out of there like ASAP. That people move. Yeah, about the safe space, I don't think we have a disagreement on that. I just think like kind of people should just maybe they can infringe like a maybe a little bit stricter standard on college campuses. But I honestly think from First Amendment and what we have on the restrictions on like things like hate speech, we already have enough that we don't need much more extra restrictions on college camp because that can lead to
Yeah.
like some crazy places, right? I mean, and also I don't think any sane person would go to like a 500 people meeting and just yell the N word. Like you'll get
Yeah, I mean, no one would do that
like,
if they're
that
sane.
doesn't
Yeah.
happen, right?
And I think that's a pretty acceptable reason for you to kick out someone of the college. Because like if you're like if you have the caliber to go to a certain university, you shouldn't be going to like large meetings and screaming out the N-word.
Yeah, no, of course. And if that happens to go out and other people hear that, the acceptance rate, like the people that are applying to that college is going to drop. Like no
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
won't let that happen. It's just not allowed. Okay. Yeah, I think we can agree with on that. But I just maybe want to go back a little bit on on what you said before about the Doctor Strange thingy. It was a while ago, but I think we can. That's like a more grounded issue we can talk about. Isn't that more like related to like capitalism? Because those movies, if they really want to, like let's say the movie production of Doctor Strange, if they really want to, they can still have the Tibetan monk. They just won't have the Chinese market, like including their movie, like on the Chinese market. They just won't have like a billion people watching their movie. It's just they did that. They changed the character solely because they wanted to make more money. That's what my opinion like is that like it's not because like Chinese government can't really force them to do it. They can't really
No,
I don't think they can force them.
no, but I'm just saying that they have an influence in America which is unprecedented.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. That I'll give you another example because that example is a bit murky. I'll give you like China buying up U.S. national, like U.S. debt. China buying like large amounts of U.S. debt. That's another example of interference in U.S. Systems, economic systems specifically, right? Because if they suddenly want to cash in on all their debt, that will crash the U.S. economy.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
True.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of things, not just Doctor Strange, and I'm just saying that China telling U.S. corporations what to do is also very problematic to me. That's just what I was trying to get at. And yes, it is because of capitalism, and that's a loophole of capitalism because it allows other countries to also partake in the free economy.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, but I'm just saying that, yeah, I just don't like them infringing in general.
So, all right, let's move on from those topics. So, what would you say that maybe like no matter who gets elected, let's say Biden gets elected, all right? Like what would like in your opinion, what should be the right foreign policy on things like Trump and the trade war and just like those sort of things? Like what's you said you support Trump's way of like dealing with trade wars with China, right?
No, Trump has done a great job in foreign policy, even better than Obama. Like, especially regarding the Middle East, he's brought peace among Israel and the many parts of the UAE and other countries in the Middle East at a rapid pace. He's done that quite quickly.
Palestinians would probably disagree with you, but go ahead.
No, not Palestinians. Palestine isn't currently a country. But I'm just saying that countries that are existing right now,
Okay.
Israel has managed to make peace deals, which is unprecedented. Trump has kind of curbed China's influence in the US. He kind of did flick them off pretty like seriously. Like he gave a warning, and they kind of, although there is a deficit right now, that's more so because of the coronavirus than because of the fact that he lost the trade war.
Okay.
The U.S. does need more stuff from China regarding the coronavirus.
Would you say that Trump sacrificed a lot of the domestic, like maybe like 1 or 2 years of domestic growth on the trade war? And if the Biden administration, if Biden gets elected, all that would go to waste though. Like, I mean, Biden will probably not keep Trump's foreign policy going, especially on China. And like what?
I'm not sure. I don't know. He doesn't have a harsh stance on China. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's trying to play the vague game. I mean, as long as Trump messes himself up, it's looking good in Biden. Okay, let's go to like the last section. What do you think of what are some of your predictions on the election? What are some of your thoughts on both the candidates?
If Trump shuts up for like a couple of minutes, he might win. And there's a high chance that Biden will win.
There's a higher chance that Biden will win. Yeah, I agree. The polls are not looking good on Donald Trump, and some of the people on the right are like kind of in this, you know, they're just
kind of tricked right now. They think Trump will win, and the chances of him winning are like pretty low.
Yeah, they're completely disagreeing the poll numbers, which I'm not saying like people should trust. But if Biden's 20%,
there is conservative, anti-conservative bias in the polls. Just because conservatives, I feel, aren't in the areas where the polls. I don't think it's that great of a random sample. I don't think it covers conservatives as much, and also a lot of conservatives aren't willing to like say their opinion openly. So, for example, if I went to Harvard, I wouldn't say that I was conservative.
Well, Harvard 2% of conservative professors, so you're probably
I wouldn't go around saying that I'm conservative in Harvard at all, right?
Yeah.
So that's another reason. But one thing that Trump, there is an optimistic poll number though. Ben Shapiro was actually talking about this, was the fact that, you know, the speech where it's like, where Reagan said it, famously. He's like, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" Right?
Yeah.
50% plus, like 55% of Americans believe that they are better off than 4 years ago.
Really? I mean,
yeah, okay. It's Gallup poll.
I'm not aware of that poll, but like a lot of the COVID polls are not looking good for Trump.
No, not the COVID polls, but I'm just saying that 4 years ago, according to like the Gallup polls, yeah, they think that they are more optimistic.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that if Trump kind of was less of an asshole, and he was more like he played on his economic achievements and all the other things that he did. And he's had very liberal policies, by the way. He gave citizenship to a lot of DACA people under the DACA program. He's done more conservative things, but he hasn't been like far right like people predicted. He's done very liberal things too.
I wouldn't say those are like liberal policies, but those are probably not traditional conservative.
Yeah, conservative.
His policies kind of like my impression of him is that the only thing he cares about is winning the election. Like he probably doesn't, let's be honest, he probably doesn't like invest all his time like on, you know, debating whether he should promote this policy or that policy. He just wants to win, whatever gets him to win the election. That's what, and that's what I think. Like, even I would argue that there is this one dangerous aspect of Trump is that what if, because he's openly said that if he loses the election, like people has asked him, and even during the debate, even before that, I took notice of it. Like there were journalists that asked him at the presidential briefing that if he happens to lose, will he have a peaceful transfer of power? And he basically said, if the mail-in ballots are not rigged, I should win. And if he didn't say if I lose, but he said if there is potential voter fraud, then we have to look into it. So he basically did not answer with yes or no. And
Trump has a great argument regarding mail-in ballots, by the way. there's no evidence that it does lead to fraud, but just based on a logical perspective, mail-in ballots are sent to all registered voters, right? By default. And
I think there's only 10 states that you actually send everybody to the like to a vote.
no, but I'm just saying that once mail-in ballots are like implemented in all the states, that's what will happen. In the states that where mail-in ballot is, implemented, that's what happens. They give it to all the registered voters out there.
But it's not nationwide right now. It's only like
Well, not nationwide. Some states don't even have mail-in ballots.
yeah, exactly.
So, but I'm just saying the states that have the mail-in ballots, that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but like that's another thing. That's like a fundamental issue. Like, would you disagree with that if you really want a democracy? Wouldn't you want everyone to vote though? Like, wouldn't you want the voter turnout to be 100%?
But 1/5 of the voter registration is fraudulent or it's misplaced.
Really?
Yeah, look it up.
Really, 1/5?
Approximately.
That's like able to swing like 90% of past elections. 1/5 of them are fraudulent. Like in the past.
No, not fraudulent. I'm just saying that there's misplacements. There might be misplacements. And a couple of million of people on the voter registration are dead voters.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah, look it up. I can search up the source for you right now.
Okay, share the screen if you want to.
Watchdog identifies 50,000 double voters, 350,000 dead voters, and that's only in a state.
Yeah, put that on the share screen if you can. Let me allow you to do so.
Here. Okay, so this is like one state. So I'm just saying that this is all they've identified. So their predictions are much higher.
Okay.
How do you flip the camera on this thing? Here.
Well,
you see that?
Identifies, yep. 50,000 double voters, 350,000 dead persons still on rolls. I mean, yeah.
And that's all they found. That's like what they've gone through after like literally, going through each individual one. So imagine how much more there are.
So would you say that's a legit argument that Trump can make? And like what do you think then? What should we do with this information?
I don't know, man. Like honestly, that's a hard question to ask.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like,
yeah. I mean, a lot of people aren't sure. So like, yeah, there is voter fraud, like in every election, and people are caught. But do we know how much voter fraud there actually was in past elections?
Yeah, there's no way to find out, actually.
Yeah, we don't even know how much there was in past elections. So saying that it's different this election is inherently wrong. I think saying that there was more like fraud this election is wrong, I think.
Yeah, because there's really no way to measure it, right?
Yeah, there's no way to measure it. So I mean, like there should be a peaceful transfer of power, but I'm just saying that him arguing for in-person voting is so much more,
Yeah, but
it's so much more better. Yeah, in-person voting is definitely much better and it's safer.
But we're not doing this for fun. I mean, it's 2020 and we have to kind of do it for health issues, a health concern. Yeah, I mean,
and Trump has argued that the people who can't vote because they're immunocompromised, those people don't need to go, but the healthy people can go out and vote.
Those people don't need to go? By that you mean like people should vote for them, or they just can't? They just
mail-in ballots. Those people can mail in ballots.
Okay.
But the people should go out and vote. That's what he argued, and I completely agree with that.
Yeah. Do you think we have a future for online voting, just like digital? Do it digitally?
Yeah, but not in the next decade.
Oh no. Okay. And also like
not for the next 10 years. I mean, we should slowly shift it. For sure.
Yeah.
But no, not in like the next 5 to 10 years. Like we should move it state by state, because some states are obviously more qualified for it. So like California, even though it's very liberal, yes, they do have more systems in place for online voting. Or mail-in voting, or whatever you want to call it.
We have a pretty archaic, system.
But it's better than most of the other parts of the country,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely better than some, but we have a lot of improvements to be made. Okay,
Yeah.
Our last topic. So, um, what do you like? What are some of the things that you think would like? What do you think the government, like the left and right dynamic, would shift or take place in the next 4 years? Like after, let's say, like would there be, because a lot of people say that if Biden gets elected, it will be a
If
uh,
Biden gets elected, there will be definitely more Republican people in the U.S.
is that just because the pendulum effect? Like when Obama was there, they wanted Trump, and when Trump was there, they wanted Biden. It's just like a never-ending thing between.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, because and I think Biden will fuck up more than Obama ever did if he gets
Really?
elected.
Really?
Yeah, because he's more extreme than Obama. I mean, his record shows that he's quite moderate, but the people around him are quite extreme.
Like his cabinet?
No, the people that helped him legislate stuff for the Green New Deal, so like Bernie, AOC,
I mean,
Nancy Pelosi.
Biden has talked a lot of shit about Bernie Sanders. Like I think it was a week ago when people asked him like, what's like, people have called you far left. What do you
No,
want?
but that's not what he's doing right now. I mean, he's been talking out. It's like he's still getting help from Bernie regarding a lot of the stuff that he's writing down. So a lot of the things he's planning. So like the Green New Deal,
But he's
and
not doing it though. He's not
and
doing.
even in the debate, you can tell he's very far left because he wouldn't give an answer on court packing. That's a no go for a lot of the presidents. The only president that ever attempted court packing was FTR, and that guy was like he did a lot of things for the American people.
What? But like, if after Trump, what Trump did, wouldn't like any sort of Democratic president want to pack the court? Like him not answer, because Trump implemented, like Trump got like three uh Supreme Court justices in there, and if you're a Democrat and those were Republican leaning justices, you want
Yeah,
more spots to be opened, and you put more Democrat. That's not a far left or moderate issue. I don't think so. I mean, that's
no,
just,
no. You know what court packing means? Court packing means
yeah,
adding more positions.
yeah, I know, but
Like
like,
there are 9 justices, so court packing doesn't mean adding like changing the ones that are there. Court packing means adding 5 more, so 14.
I
That's
know, but that's, I don't think that's a far or moderate issue, because
that's a very extreme issue. No one ever attempted it. There were
yeah,
times. There are times where there were very liberal courts because Roe v. Wade was passed by a very liberal court.
okay,
There have been times when there was a little more conservative court
yeah,
or
yeah,
very
I
conservative court,
understand, yeah.
but never have those. But
What I'm what I'm trying
but
to get to is,
but I'm just saying that there's never been a threat of court packing before, except for FDR. And you know what happened to FDR?
they compromised, but they didn't actually pack the court.
No, they threatened to impeach him, and you know they threatened to kick him out if he packed the courts. That's
Well,
what happened. There was some sort of compromise. That's what it says in the history books. But I'm just saying that in reality, he was afraid. He didn't attempt to do it because even his own side, the Democrats, would have kicked him out if he did that. And I'm just saying that Biden isn't even as popular as FDR. FDR, his approval ratings were like 50% plus,
okay.
like close to 70%. And Biden, who no one likes, even in his own party, attempting to do that is preposterous to me.
Mm,
And even if he was popular as FDR, it's wrong for him to just pack the courts. Because imagine what happens if conservatives occupied the Senate and the House, like they did at the start of Trump's election. They packed the courts too. So do you seriously want a scenario where we keep packing courts every time there's a situation where one party dominates?
it's obviously a very dangerous thing to pack the court, but
So it's very dangerous thing to
yeah,
pack. You don't
the only thing I'm trying to say is that I feel like it's not a much of a moderate extreme left issue just because it's 2020. Because the Democrats, anybody from the left, even like the corporate, even like Obama left, those people, they've all seen Trump like like did damage for 4 years, like very bad things. They've all seen Trump had a lot of devastating things on the country, and they wanted, like, for example, the when Trump right now he wants to add another Supreme Court justice. Like, um,
Replacing someone who died. He's not adding another position
okay,
entirely.
yeah, my bad, my bad. Let me rephrase this. Replace someone that replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg that just died. However, when Obama did that, when Obama wanted to replace someone a year before the election, he didn't get to do it. So if Trump
He didn't have the whole Senate.
okay, but so if Trump succeed in this, but the thing is, they didn't even. I don't think they even got to the Senate. Like the Trump.
He didn't control the Senate.
Okay, so but okay. I don't think I have enough information on this to
So okay, I'll explain it to you.
back up my argument. I'm just trying to say that okay, let's just say packing the court is extreme is like very far left. All right.
Yeah, it's very far. Whichever side proposes it is very extreme. It's not something you should do.
Okay, I agree with you. It's very dangerous. Let's just say it's far left. So I don't see other policies of Biden that really shows he's like extreme. I think he's very centrist, honestly. Like any of it, he's not willing to do the Green New Deal, and he did not commit to the Bernie's universal base. And
He's gonna raise corporate taxes. That's pretty far left.
yeah, but he's not adding taxes to anybody with an annual income within $400,000. That's like a lot of.
No, you want me to explain why that's extreme? Because if you learn anything, if you take any basic economics course, do you know what happens when you raise taxes on the rich?
What happens if
After a certain level, what happens is that the rich move their money into tax loopholes. So, for example, they will move it to real estate, where you don't need to pay taxes, basically.
Like what Trump did?
No, he didn't do that. He lost money. That's why he wasn't paying taxes.
Well, that too, but like he.
No, but it wasn't most. It was because he lost money. But I'm just saying that if you were like an astute businessman and they were taxing you much higher, and they were trying to suck money out of you, you'd either leave the country and take your with it. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying that having a high tax rate doesn't necessarily equate to having more money coming in.
Yeah, for
Sometimes
sure.
The opposite happens, especially considering the fact that corporate taxes have been at their highest, record highs, even right now.
So how would that be an argument for extreme left? That's not.
Because he's raising taxes on people that aren't dumb. And you know it's obviously not going to happen. That's an extreme. What I'm considering extreme is dumb. Like, extreme arguments are dumb in my opinion. Like, dumb and extreme, I'm using them kind of simultaneously. So, like, they mean the same thing to me right now.
Okay.
So what he's arguing is completely dumb from an economic standpoint. It's not going to work.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know how the government's going to get their, like, taxation, especially when the economy is this bad. I'm going to just end with, like, yeah, I probably have a different definition of extreme left. I'm not considering them dumb. I'm just saying, like, if you're like, even Bernie Sanders, I consider him as a social democrat. He's not a socialist. He's just not. Like, he has a lot of weird ideas that are probably very not pragmatic.
His ideas don't work. I mean, the fact that Bernie Sanders is considered normal is preposterous.
But you can argue that's a byproduct of Trump, though. Like, they have.
No, he's had the same opinion for a couple of years, like for the couple of decades that he's been alive.
Yeah, but his constituents were like, they were looking very promising until like when Elizabeth Warren like kind of like swayed to Biden, the Biden campaign, and he was defeated. Like, he was looking great in the primaries.
Yeah, he was. And I'm just saying that. And do you know what happened to the stock market when that happened?
Did it drop? I have no clue.
Yeah, it dropped.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Politics is complicated. Like,
no, but even if you're not conservative and if you know basic economics, if the Democratic Party became more democratic socialist, it wouldn't work out.
Yeah, I'm arguing it's more okay, but I mean, who knows if Bernie's policies are going to work out? He's not even one.
No, it doesn't work out historically. It never worked.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so about the point with Biden, when you said they were not, so this is basically a dumb policy. So are you just like implying that the government is not going to get enough, like it's going to get far less money, like if Biden gets elected, because they're not taxing people like under $400,000 income, and they what you're saying is they're taxing the smart people so they can have like some.
No, I'm just saying that if you have any sense of logic and the government is taxing you, unless you're an idiot, you would who like basically just hands over the money. You wouldn't do that. Like
That's not just with Biden though. Everyone under any sort of president, they would always try to go through the legal loopholes and try to save as much taxes as they want. That's just
I know, but what he's doing, even Obama, who was considered Democrat, okay, I'll compare him to Obama, who I consider is more centrist than Biden.
yeah.
Obama, when he didn't hike taxes up like what Biden's proposing. He kept it incrementally, like he kept it very small increases. He still maintained capitalism like measures. He never went to socialistic measures except for Medicare and Medicaid. And even that he didn't support with taxpayer. He just made it into debt. So basically he got the money that Medicare and Medicaid needed. He charged it to the US government. He didn't tax the people. And he just basically put it as a minus sign. So he put it into the America's deficit.
Okay.
And what Biden is doing is extreme in the sense that he's actually he's going to do the exact same thing. He's going to put it to the deficit, which should worry you. Because rich people aren't going to pay up. And I didn't call rich people smart. I'm just saying that if you have any sort of logic and the government's taxing you like that, you wouldn't pay the tax.
So you're basically arguing that it would be a bad thing because in order for those healthcare things to work, our country will be put in a deficit if we're not taxing people like that have like medium income under the potential.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that you should okay. So liberals and conservatives have had liberals. I agree with classical liberal opinions. So like higher tax rates, and I agree with conservative opinions, less government. I agree. I see the merits on both sides. But what you're seeing in the Democratic Party right now is the illiberal left. So liberals who argue things that they know are wrong, that have historically been wrong, and they point to things like, oh, when there was a 91% tax rate, right?
Okay.
The government was doing so much better. Like there wasn't as much inequality.
Well, that's not anywhere close to what Biden's arguing, is it?
No, but I'm just saying, no, but that's like the logic of his argument. So he's saying that the higher tax rate there is, the better the US economy does and the better the people on the bottom do.
Sure.
But the fact is that the people who did that study forgot one key detail about the example that I just gave. When they were taxing corporations 91%, the US was the only country in the world, basically the only country in the world that still had its infrastructure running because it was after World War II.
So you're saying now people can actually go to other countries, but back then.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that other countries have the capacity to compete with the US.
Yeah.
So back then, even though they taxed people 91% or 93%, whatever the number was, people still stayed in the US because
they were
making a lot of money. They were still like making a ton of money because they could sell all of their products to other countries who don't have the ability to create the factories because all of them were bombed after World War II. But I'm just saying that now other countries have factories and they have the infrastructure to create things. So they're just not gonna like sit down and just, if the US, the companies, if the tax rate is improved, there's no way for them to, make a ton of money, like make the same sort of money that they made in the past. So obviously they're going to logically go to another country.
Okay. So you're saying Biden's plan would not work out very well.
It wouldn't work in any standpoint. Like it doesn't make any sense. Even to a kid who basically took only 2 economics courses in his life.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But okay. Let's just end on this note now. I just want to say those are fair arguments. I would categorize that into like you don't believe in Biden's policies, but I wouldn't still say he's a socialist or he's far left per se. Like you're giving examples of how he would be a bad president, but I don't think that's saying.
I don't know what he'll do. I feel like he's gonna say the things that he's saying, and if it doesn't work out, he's gonna quickly change to a more moderate position.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying that what he says right now doesn't make any sense.
Sure, because that's what he needs to. He just needs to kind of hide in the basement, defeat Trump with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Last thing, prediction for the 2020 election. Who's gonna win? Put your money on
Biden.
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 All right.
Yeah,
All right. Thanks,
yeah,
Felix. Thank you for doing
yeah.
this.
Good one, bro.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
See you. Yeah.
See you guys. Peace.